Can I curse on this podcast?
Welcome to The Other 51, a podcast about writing with me, Brian Moritz. This week, we remember Philadelphia Inquirer columnist Bill Lyon. But first, a conversation with Jesse Dougherty, Washington National's beat writer for The Washington Post. Thanks for doing this again. It's been 2 years since you've been on. It's been a busy 2 years for you, too. Just kind of talk a little bit about, first of all, what you've been doing for the last 2 years.
Oh, man. So, we last talked in January of 18. I went to the college beat probably 2 months later, covered the University of Maryland. Didn't last too long on that beat until I was promoted to cover the Nationals in place of Jorge Castillo, who went to the LA Times. Became sort of the partner to Chelsea Janes, who then went to the campaign trail about 3 months after that to cover the 2020 election. And I kind of stumbled into being the lead beat writer at the Post. And that was in August of 2018. And ever since, I've been sort of knee deep in baseball and then nose deep once the Nationals went to the World Series. And it's been really interesting experience getting to sort of know the world of baseball reporting and writing and all that. So it's just it's a whole crazy certain sector of the sports universe that now I'm sort of fully interested.
So what's the we'll get obviously in depth on the World Series and the playoff run and everything, but what's that like when you jump on the baseball beat? Because having covered minor league baseball, like it's similar, but there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing in sports journalism like covering a baseball beat. So what's so different about it?
Yeah, I mean I guess the first thing is the time spent, and I think the actual really authentic face-to-face interaction. So I think that what I've learned, even just doing a very sort of quick run through the other sports as an intern or as a younger reporter helping out in the NFL, the NBA, even the NHL, there are so many gatekeepers in those sports. And I always felt like there was a PR person or an agent or a manager managing a lot of the interactions and media relationships. Where in baseball, a lot of the time, 95% of the time, you're just walking up to a guy at his locker and saying, "Hey, can we talk today?" And that requires a lot of things. That requires a certain level of humility because you're kind of the uncool kid in the lunchroom who's just like standing around the room and has nowhere to sit. It also requires relationships and building those relationships over time. So the biggest thing I've learned on the baseball beat by far is the value of trust between athlete and reporter, the value of mending relationships and building them over a long period of time. It's not just going to happen in one day. You're not going to go over to Max Scherzer once, say, "Can we talk?" And just because I'm the beat writer for the Washington Post, he's going to now respect me and give me his time. He's going to want to see that I'm willing to put in the work, willing to, really indulge myself in his world and actually take a real interest, an authentic interest in what he's doing before someone like him is going to actually let their guard down and discuss things with you. So, that was the difficulty right away. And I sort of had to do that all very quickly. And but that's what I learned for sure.
That's obviously something you hear a lot about when you talk to beat reporters, building relationships and building trust in that. Someone who teaches these courses, how do you build relationships? Like what goes into that part of the job? Because it's not as easy as just like how you write a lead or how you interview somebody. So how do you build relationships with people, especially like you said, when you're kind of dropped into a beat brand new and it's an established clubhouse, there's an established hierarchy of personality to it. How do you go about building that trust?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's any one answer. It's really difficult. It's probably the hardest part of the job, and or one of them. And I think one thing I always lean on really heavily is transparency. I always think if I were an athlete and in a given day I had a TV camera come up to me, 2 reporters, a social media channel, and then the team's website asking me all these different questions, I would probably at the end of the day be like, where the hell does all that stuff go? What does it look like? Is it an article? Is it a video? Is it a blog? Like where? Like I feel like these guys are inundated with so many questions and requests and pulls for their time that there isn't a lot of, hey, my name's Jesse. I work for the Washington Post. This is going to be a story. I don't always know the day, but this is going to be a story soon about you, your base stealing technique, and how you became a fast runner, and sort of where you think base stealing fits in the grand scheme of the future of baseball. I made that all up right now, but I don't even know. That maybe is a really boring story. But but actually letting them know what you're working on and what you're writing, and also that you're willing to sort of say that I don't really know about this. And the reason why I want to ask you about it is because I don't want to write about this or portray it in the wrong way. I think that's a tool for me that is really beneficial. It also helps me build relationships. It's also genuine. I don't know as much as them about baseball. I want to get to know things that they do, and I want them to help me figure out certain topics and topic areas. But at the same time, I think guys generally respect if you sort of lay out for them who you are, what you're doing, where things will appear. So I really lean on transparency.
Yeah, this is going to be a shameless name drop, but whatever. Joe Posnanski and I were talking about that a couple episodes ago when, that value in being, the admitting what you don't know. And I say that to my students all the time. Don't be afraid to look stupid in front of the person you're interviewing, because the alternative is you're going to look stupid in your story the next day and in front of everybody who reads it and in front of everybody else. That's such a valuable reporting tool technique. And it's genuine too. Like you said, you want to, and I've also found too that athletes, when I would interview them, they love talking about that stuff more than almost anything because they've dedicated their lives. This is their craft. And when someone takes a genuine interest in it, it's really like they light up and they love talking about it.
Yeah. And then we have a better, foundation when they do mess up or if they do something great. Like it's, I think stringing along those conversations over months at a time, weeks at a time, probably also helps you not bother them as much later. Like if I have the foundational understanding of you, and we can sort of do that over time, like I said, whether it's in spring training, earlier in the season, like come October when I'm covering you in the World Series, it may be a quick follow-up like, hey, is that the thing we talked about in March? Yeah, it is. And you kind of already know, and you get to sort of have this wealth of knowledge about the players you cover. And it's interesting to see those things come together. But it depends on sort of getting them on the front end and having them explain to you early on what they do and what the process is.
Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if you could kind of walk me through a whole baseball season on the beat, because this was your first full season on the beat, and obviously even before the World Series, it was an interesting one for the Nationals. So just kind of let's start maybe with spring training, and obviously everything happened in the off season with the Nationals this year, but kind of walk through what reporting and what spring training looks like for you as the beat guy.
Yeah, I did all 6 weeks down in West Palm Beach, Florida. Typically, we split it up a little more, but being my first year, I wanted to make sure I was there for the entire time to maximize what that sort of could be. And the thing about spring training that's great is guys are it's when they're most loose. I mean, one, the record's 0-0. There's no reason to be upset or anything unless you're injured. And there's a lot of opportunities to get long one-on-one, sit-down interviews, talk to some guys who, once the year starts, kind of shut down and become really difficult to get, day to day. And for me, I was writing pretty much daily, probably 5-6 times a week, setting up the season. Sort of, I kind of saw it as like introducing the characters you're now going to read about for the next 6 months. Just kind of like, here's where everybody is. We're reintroducing them at this time and place. This is what happened last year. This is their expectations for this year. Here's the money they're making. You kind of go through almost like a table of contents in a way for what's about to unfold. But for me, it was working on a few bigger features for our preseason guide. I mean, there obviously is always the utility perspective of it, but it was a relationship opportunity. Didn't miss anything. You're in the clubhouse for an hour and a half every morning, and then about an hour in the afternoon, you get to just hang by the field and talk to team officials, scouts, front office personnel that aren't really around a lot during the year. A lot of those guys are on the road traveling, so everyone's in one place, which is very unique. And then you start seeing those people, pop up during the year, and they might give you an interview that, had you not had a side of the field conversation in March, that in May or June, July, they wouldn't stop and say, hey, how you doing, or whatever it may be. So that's the biggest thing for me. And then I guess we go into the season. Yeah,
sure. And especially with the way the Nationals started this year, obviously Bryce Harper leaves and goes to Philly, and that's kind of the story coming into the season. Then they start off, they're 19-31 and not having it well. What was it? The mood of the team, and what was kind of like it like being a reporter in that in the clubhouse at that point? What's it like on the beat when they're kind of scuffling like they are?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you have to work that much harder, I feel like, because we talked earlier about if you do go and write something in the newspaper that's wrong, whether it be why a guy swung at a pitch or why someone was fired, you're not fooling anybody. There's 6 or 7 professionals on the beat that have been there for a while. A lot of information flowing out from a lot of different outlets. I think that, whether it was the Harper stuff, the pitching coach being fired in early May, the team going to 19-31, murmurs about, Dave Martinez being fired, all of that made me more vigilant and have to sort of work to get the next person to confirm something, and then the next person. It wasn't, I wasn't confident enough in my sort of all my relationships quite yet, or source building to pick up the phone and make one phone call and have the entire sort of picture of the Nationals, state of the Nationals all together. I had to sort of try and piece it together from a lot of different creative angles because people frankly weren't talking to me quite yet in the way that they would a seasoned 4-year, 5 years, 10-year beat writer. I had to sort of earn that, and for good reason. I was new, so it was definitely trying. And I think had the season kept going down that path, it would have been extremely trying because people would have started losing their jobs and there would have been a lot of roster turnover. The fact that they turned around and you kind of became then the chronicler of this, what ended up being a magical run, it ends up being obviously way different. It was actually the stark opposite of how the season began. But having the foundation of knowing those guys, being there when they were at their worst, and then also chronicling them when they were at their best, I think you also gain a certain level of, credibility from that as well, within the clubhouse and outside of it. It's not like you're someone who's just globbing on when they're winning. No, we were there in May when they were sort of getting swept out of New York by the Mets and things were bleak. So, but I do think it just makes you a sharper reporter because you can't just be wrong. You can't assume that maybe because 5 national writers say Dave Martinez is on the hot seat, okay, yeah, I'll write it too. No, you have to know. And knowing that, like, you only write things you only write things you've confirmed with multiple people, it just makes you that much more vigilant and have to work that much harder.
I was going to ask what that's like kind of in this new age of media where beat writers are much more analytical driven, much more analysis. And certainly when the Nationals have that kind of start and there's talk about the manager being fired and all of this balancing out, I was wondering what it's like for you trying to balance out kind of. Did you feel any pressure or calls from anybody, editors, people on the beat, readers, to kind of be harsher in your writing on it, or was it I don't know if I'm phrasing this right, but did you feel kind of pressure to be more Martinez is going to get fired, or they should fire him, or something along those lines?
No, it's a great question, and I think not only are beat writers has to be more analytical and do more analysis, and I certainly do that as well. I also think that the sort of progression of media and progression of beat writing is we're so I don't want to say attacked, that's such an intense word. We're sort of like, once things start happening on your beat that are of national interest, you're sort of like everyone from all sides comes in, and there's TV talking heads who have sources, and there's people on Twitter who are maybe on their armchair and have heard the managers has resigned, and there's even some former reporter or former beat writers who are now maybe a bigger status that maybe are a little bit looser with their standards of things that they actually mind putting out. And that's the most diplomatic way I can say that. It can become tough because you get asked by your editors, and rightfully so, why don't we have this? Or why are these rumors out here and we haven't reported it? And all you can say is, well, I don't know that to be true. We don't have that because either it's not happening yet or maybe we just don't have it. And that's like the worst. It's the most frustrating thing when rumors are happening on your beat and everyone from all sides is sort of pressuring you to put something out, or not pressuring you, but asking you sort of where you are with it, and you can't get it. And you feel really good later when you find out something was wrong and you didn't go with it, or you didn't, that's why you didn't have it. But at the same time, those can be really some stressful days. I'm lucky in the sense that I work with 2 of the best columnists in sports writing. I'm maybe biased. I think a lot of people would say that, in Tom Boswell and Barry Svrugla. So when Dave Martinez was on the hot seat, I would write critically in my game story for bad decisions, bad play, themes that had come up over a long stretch that I thought were indicative of possible managerial, decisions or not, things not going as well. But when it came time to drop the hammer, Barry and Tom were, more than capable to do it so eloquently and in a measured way that it really took that off me. If you were at a paper that was small, maybe didn't have that kind of columnist staff, you may be asked to take a big swing that maybe isn't appropriate for a beat writer in the traditional sense, but I never was asked to.
So as the number one beat guy, did you cover every game?
I did not. I did 72 of the 81 road games and probably took 15, maybe it's probably a lot, made a dozen home games off. So about 100 and 135 probably of the.
So that was your load management for the year.
That was my load management. Yeah. I'm trying to negotiate into my Kawhi contract to have a little bit more load management next season.
So I guess I'm always curious, like with the travel and everything, and the writing every day, and the schedule, like how much of a grind is the big league beat? Because it sounds like both like the best job because you're watching baseball all summer, but it is a grind.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I did a story in, I think it was August, and it's gonna sound funny that I don't know the month because of what the story was, but the story was essentially that no one ever knows what day of the week it is on the baseball beat, and in baseball clubhouses. It was built around players and all the times in interviews that they messed up the days of the week, because it happens every day. And I really felt that this year. It totally warps your entire life. You probably become a worse friend, a worse brother, son. You probably miss some birthdays. You definitely don't take care of yourself to the degree you should. But it is really rewarding to see it all unfold. I think when I got on the beat, Barry Svrugla, like I mentioned earlier, he was the first beat writer in Nats history, and he told me that it's a 162 chapter story, and to not take one off. I mean, it's not like even though chapter 58 is a Tuesday in Cincinnati that seems really bleak, like it's going to matter. There's something that day. A reliever pitched well, a starting pitcher sort of proved himself beyond his punching weight, whatever it may be. And I think the challenge of keeping it interesting every day. I've said this before, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like when you figure if you're on the cover of the Washington Post tomorrow and there's Sally Jenkins and Rick Mace and Barry Svrugla and Tom Boswell or Jerry Brewer or Candace Buckner or any number of people, like if you write a bad story, like it's gonna show up. Like that's not really an option. So I think what gets you through August, July, the dog days, so to speak, are that you kind of don't have an option but to write a really good story every day, because if not, you're gonna sort of show yourself, and that's sort of the biggest fear for me.
So how'd you manage to take care of yourself and survive your first full season?
I don't know if I took care of myself. I had a cough for like 2 months, and I think I'm still recovering from the World Series run. I think the best advice I got was from Ben Shpigel of the New York Times, who covered baseball. I don't want to say back in the day because that's going to sound like it's dating Ben, but he covered baseball back in the day, and he told me to do something for yourself every day, and that was my best advice I got. So reading for an hour, working out, going for a walk in a city you're visiting. Like it can't be baseball all day, because once you hit 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m., and you go to the clubhouse for pregame, like then you're in it, and then it's the rest of the night is writing your notebook, trying to get news, trying to contextualize the game story, figuring out your follow for the morning. But if you can sort of take 9 a.m. whenever you wake up to 2 p.m. as your time and try and maximize it. And you can't do that every day. Some days you're working on features and other stuff, making phone calls, but try and actually do something every day for yourself. It can even just be eating a good lunch. It sounds sad that that's something for yourself, but that's how dire it gets. That was the best advice I got, for sure.
So they make the playoffs. They have the one game. They're in the wild card against the Brewers. They're home. They have a come from behind win to stay in the playoffs at all. And I'm going to link to all these stories I mentioned in the show notes because they're fantastic. And I want to know, first of all, what was your deadline situation on the Milwaukee game, on the wild card game? Do you remember?
Yeah. So I filed first edition right at the end of the game. So final out. I think my lead held actually for the second edition. I ended up just going with it because I had to get something together really fast. Typically, we had after final pitch to file our next edition, so that would leave me about 20 minutes to go to the clubhouse and try and gather quotes, and then run back up and flip it back over. And I had a lot of help too. I mean, Sam Fortier, who's worked on the beat with me, who's been on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he would help. He wasn't always on deadline for prints. He would feed me quotes by text or email, and we all sort of did that together. And there was a lot of help. So I can't act like I hit those really tight deadlines alone. There was definitely a team effort, but they were pretty crazy, man. It was final out on the runner, which is typical, and then coming back about 45 minutes to an hour later. And then I think that night, any night they clinched and there was a big celebration, I took a third swing for the web. So what happens on the internet is actually like a sort of a written through feature that sort of takes more of the celebration and adds it in, because it was just hard to get a lot of that in for the second edition of the paper.
Right. And they get through the playoffs, they get to the World Series, and just in general, I mean, we're going to talk a lot about Game 6, obviously, but in general, what's it like covering the World Series?
Oh, it was so cool, man. It was the coolest thing for me is like, it's funny. It's so corny to say this, but like, I think if you were a sports fan, you would think it was really cool to like be around Bryce Harper, Max Scherzer, whoever it may be. But I got to cover the World Series next to Dave Sheinin, Barry Svrugla, and Tom Boswell, and that's like getting to work with your heroes. And I was, and it doesn't end there. I mean, Sam was there, Chelsea Janes, who came back from the campaign trail to chip in, Isabel Kershudian, who had covered the Stanley Cup run for the Washington Capitals, then comes back and helps. And there's just having her experience, obviously knowing all the stakes and everything that goes into a championship run was really cool. And then Adam Kilgore, who joined us back when the series came back home for games 3, 4, and 5, who is a former beat writer, and everyone calls him the best beat writer in Nats history, and everyone is exactly right. And his stuff was just incredible. So the coolest thing for me, aside from the writing and getting to sort of see your name under some really big headlines and on some really big stories, was just getting to sit with those people, talk about the game with them after, before, during. In the press box in Houston, it was me, Barry Boz, and Dave Sheinin again, who's our national baseball writer and is like my favorite writer in the world. And I know I just totally sound like I just stumbled off the street and wound up in the sports office, but I feel that way a lot of the time. So if I do sound that way, it's reflective of how I feel about it.
So is the mechanics of covering the game and what you do for the World Series, how different is it, if at all, from like that Tuesday night in Cincinnati? Is it at the core the same, or how much different is it?
It's funny. It is at the core the same. I typically write about 400 words into a game story. During the regular season, I had about 850 to 900 words about, our night editor, Micah Pollock, would say that's a lot. That's 700, but I always try and push it down. So I would say I had about 850 to 900 during the season, and then about 100 more, so around 1,000 for my running story during the playoffs. Most days, whether I do it in a coffee shop at noon or pregame at 6 p.m., I try and write like 300 to 400 words I can live no matter what. It's sort of like when Barry told me that it was a chapter book. It's like, well, then what's the meat of the chapter? Where does this fit? Going into it, what are we thinking? And it's like, I kind of call it I call them my context graphs. They go below the nut graph. They go, so you end up writing a lead. It's somewhat formulaic. You end up writing a lead that's like the big moment, whatever sort of your story's about. You have your context graphs, and then the game sort of falls beneath that. And that's sort of how I do it. And some nights, if something crazy happens, you scrap it and you copy paste them to the bottom of your document and you don't use them. But during the playoffs, I wasn't really doing much different. I tended to write as if the Nats were going to win, because I always felt like a win story should have a little bit more juice to it. And I personally feel like writing losses is easier because they present issues. So like if the Nats lose and the bullpen's terrible or the starters get rocked, like you can write a lot about the implications of that and how that really could hurt them moving forward. And that, to me, like, it's easy to get 1,000 words out of a loss. Wins were a little tougher for me, so I would always write. I would have some kind of like concept or idea or structure sort of element that I wanted to do for a win, whether it was pulling in some like old stuff from the season, some back reporting that I had. I think for game 5 of the World Series, or maybe it was game 2, I did this thing where they had this wall of game balls from the year, and they put one for every single win. Now they just needed 2 more of them. And that was sort of like my idea for the end of a winning story. So I kind of probably put more thought into wins because I thought the losses kind of, quote unquote, wrote themselves. I do promise you, no stories write themselves. I learned that the hard way. But at the same time, I think the pre-planning for winning was probably always where my brain was going in.
Okay. And so we have to talk a little bit about Game 6. That was the crazy game with the controversial call and everything. So I'm just going to read your lead from this because it's so good. I'm going to embarrass you and read your lead. But what it took for the Washington Nationals to play again, to have one last chance at a dream that has wavered back into focus, was 25 outs from Steven Strasburg, a line homer from Adam Eaton, a towering homer from Juan Soto, the sidestepping of a controversial call from the umpires when Trey Turner was ruled out for, running to first base, and a 2-run homer lofted into the left field seats by Anthony Rendon. That was it, and now they have a shot to win the World Series in Houston on Wednesday night. First of all, that's brilliant. Friggin' brilliant. Second of all, thank you for ignoring my lessons from News 205 that your lead should be 35 words or less, because...
Everything might be double.
So, I guess before we kind of get into the lead, like games, obviously all that stuff happens. So as Game 6 is unfolding, and obviously it was a win and go home situation for the Nats. So how are you processing all of this? Because like as we're watching this at home, like you're thinking, how do you write this? So what's your process in the press box of how am I going to write this? How does it come together?
Yeah, man, I can't really remember exactly the moment when what we were thinking, but. The biggest thing I have to thank the Nationals and Astros for, and actually the Nationals, Astros, and Cardinals as well, is that there were very few late lead changes. And when I say late, I mean like 8th, 9th. 7th is, sorry to say, 7th, after watching the Nats team all season, 7th inning is small potatoes. So like 8th and 9th, like we didn't get it. So like I could kind of sell out once the 7th inning came. Once Rendon hits that homer and the Trey Turner controversy had gone away, kind of knew what the story was. But the interesting thing is is, so I mentioned all those people. We have 8 people down in Houston, right? And they're all writing certain elements of this. He has the Trey Turner story, and Isabel's going to the Astros clubhouse to get their perspective, and Sam's writing about Anthony Rendon's clutch hitting, and Barry has the column on X, Y, and Z, and Boz is going to just write some brilliant thing. My job is sort of like catch all. It's like I got to get it all in there, and you have an angle. Mostly my angle was just like what happened and what happens next, because that's sort of in the playoffs. That's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, having to contextualize all of that, and like that, I spent half that game trying to pick up my jaw from the Juan Soto homer that went 900 feet. So like I'm trying to figure out how to focus on this game, and everyone was carrying their bat to first base, and it was like that game was like, it was like being in the Twilight Zone, really. Like and the World Series didn't have a lot of good games, actually, if you really think about it, like real good baseball games. And Game 6 and 7 just delivered. Davey had gotten thrown out. You look like he was going to kill his bench coach. So there was just a lot. You're right. I mean, there was a lot to say. So when I went with that lead, I was like, okay, instead of trying to leave at one moment, let's just write all 10 of them 85 word lead that would have gotten me an F in Brian's class.
So Game 7, I guess, was sitting down to write that, and you watching this. I'm curious, you mentioned like writing out for the Washington Post front page of the sports section or the front page of the paper. Did you feel pressure going like in Game 7 at all, thinking like, especially when they win, like, holy cow, this is the story, you know, like the Nationals win the World Series, Washington Post story. Did that get in your mind at all, or is it just kind of you're plowing through it?
No, it was in my mind all day. I mean, I woke up. I woke up with a pit in my stomach. And it's like it seems so corny. Like I was not playing. I did not have to pitch. I did not even have bat in that game. But like, you know, you woke up, you threw headphones in, like I'm going to take a walk around Houston and settle my brain. Like, but then you're like, okay, I need to chill out. Like you guys just write. You got to do what I mean. And the best advice I got that night was from a few people, just like, you're right, what you see. Like it's all that you can do is like whatever happens. And I think that's obviously simplifying it a bit. There's a lot of context to pull in, and a lot of years of, you know, heartbreak and for the city, and a lot of ways you want to sort of contextualize it. But no, I felt immense pressure. And whenever I do feel that, I try and quell that pressure by writing. So I wrote about probably that night. I probably had like 1,200 words for a runner. Again, like I'm pushing. You can hear me in real time pushing my word down. I wrote probably 500 words for each a win and a loss. That was the only game of the whole playoffs that I had 2 documents for a win and a loss. Other than that, I kind of was confident enough to work in the same one, copy paste things around quickly, and it was fine for me. But that game, I knew I was going to have such. I mean, and again, the Nationals go down 3-0 and or 2-0, well, whatever it was. I wrote a loss story. I was like, it was the only way I was going to be seen in the press box was if I was ahead. So I probably had like 900 words of a loss story that exists somewhere in my laptop, and then they go ahead in the 7th, and you know, boom, boom, Howie Kendrick homers off Will Harris, and then it's like, okay, well, now we're writing a win. Then you just go, and they got some insurance runs in the 8th that helped a lot to sort of let me just zero in. I was writing. One of the funny stories, I don't know if I've told anybody this publicly, was, and it's kind of embarrassing actually, but I can I curse on this podcast? I don't want to curse. Like,
go ahead.
Okay. So I went down to the clubhouse, and Daniel Hudson, who got the final out of the World Series, was just standing alone drinking a beer in the hallway. And I said, hey, man, can you have a second to talk? And Dan and I had a good relationship. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And I was like, so, what's it like getting the final out of the World Series? Like people don't get to experience that, right? Like it's a very unique situation. And he goes, oh, pretty good. Like, you know, yeah, he's kind of understated in general, but he describes the moment. And then I said, it'd been like an hour. And I was like, what was the final out? Because I had been writing during the final pitch. I had zero clue. I really didn't. I could have I wouldn't have known Michael Brantley was at the plate. I admit that. My head was in my laptop trying to write this story. I waited for some signal that, I hear on the field, they're waiting, tweet, right, whatever. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he was like, is it your exact job to know how he's like, I sure got Michael Brantley swinging. And I was like, oh, congrats. So I think that shows kind of how hectic the end of the game was, is that I didn't even really watch the end, which sounds awful, but I was really busy trying to write a coherent story.
So we started talking before we recorded about what the quote unquote off season is like, and you were mentioning earlier too that you think the off season is kind of more interesting than the season itself. Why is that?
Oh, not more interesting, more stressful.
More stressful. Got you. Both. Yes.
Well, I'm working on the book on the national season.
Yes, congratulations for that. On that.
Appreciate it. So that's for me, like, I'm doing my work for the Post still. I'm covering the off season, trying to get as many scoops as possible on the free agency, and then tangentially to that, in addition to that, kind of reliving the season start to finish. So while we tape this, I'm in the middle of July. So my brain is sort of half in July of 2019, half in November of 2019, fully nowhere is probably how I would describe it. And it's from a workload perspective, I feel like every day, I mean, I'm trying to bang out a couple thousand words a day between both, work for the Post, covering this off season, and also on the book that hopefully people will really enjoy. So that's I think I don't know if it's really more stressful. I'm in one place. Maybe that's what's stressing me out. I'm so not used to being stationary that I'm a little restless and antsy. But yeah, it kind of just keeps on going. I'll end up having spent pretty much a full year on the 2019 Nats once we're done with the book editing process and everything goes.
Excellent. So I asked you this 2 years ago, so you should be prepared for it. Best thing you've read lately?
Oh man, I haven't been reading a lot. I regret that. So the easiest thing I can do, and that's always, is Eli Sazlo has a new story that was excellent, and he's doing a lot of amazing work on just healthcare and medical care across sort of rural America and a lot of remote places. And he's an idol of mine and someone I really would love to write one story like one day, let alone the million he's done in his own voice and style. And I read Taffy Brodesser-Akner's Tom Hanks story. I know that's pretty. It's not fair to Taffy, but I feel like that's almost a cliche answer because everybody loves her story so much. But it's deserved. So that was great. And I'm reading the Water Dancer, which is Ta-Nehisi Coates' new novel. And I started like September 28th, and I'm usually really good about reading, but I'm on page like 40. So I'm on like a 1 page a day rate right now with all that's been happening. So. But hopefully soon I'll sit down and actually read it.
And did I ever tell you that I was this close to having Eli Sazlo in your News 205 class?
Oh man, that would be awesome.
So it was a funny story on that. It was like I had been emailing him, and he was agreed he was going to Skype into class. And the story we read, which is one of the food stories that he did back in 2013 in that series, and he was all set to do it, and he confirmed and everything. And literally the day he was supposed to be in our class was the day he won the Pulitzer.
And knowing him a bit, just over the years meeting him, he probably didn't realize that was the day until someone told him because he's just so.
Well, of course not. And I'm like, if you're not gonna be able to be in my class, that's a really good reason to not have it. Is you literally won a Pulitzer that day.
Yeah, so. Not bad, man. Yeah, I'd say read his latest, and then if you have time, just keep going through his author.
Hey, it's Brian. I wanted to take a few minutes to remember Bill Lyon, the former Philadelphia Inquirer columnist who died this past weekend at age 81. 2 years ago, Mike Sielski was a guest on the podcast, and he talked about what made Lyon such a special columnist. Here's Mike from 2017.
Well, I never read anything like him before, and I don't know that I've read anything like him since. He just had this style of writing, this kind of lyrical way. He was both lyrical and concise, which is something I really admired about him. He did I mentioned this in my column. He did a lead for a column when the Flyers were playing the New Jersey Devils in the playoffs one year, right at the height of the Devils' neutral zone trap. Mm-hmm. And the Flyers were favoring the series, and the Devils were kicking their tails, basically because the Flyers were skating right into the trap, and the Devils were taking the puck away and heading the other way to the other end of the ice and scoring at will. And the lead to his column was, "Come into my parlor," said the Spider to the Flyers. And I read that and was like, oh my God, how did he think of that? That's just perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And so, like I said in the column, I wrote him a letter and he didn't write me back. He called me up. He looked my phone number up and called me and took me to a Phillies game. And he's one of those guys who, when you read what he writes, you sense that he is a good person. Mm-hmm. And then you met him and you realize, oh, he's even better than a good person, Mm-hmm. And he was probably at times a little soft. He was probably a little reluctant to criticize people. Like he I just finished writing a column which I pretty much kind of hammered the Sixers for their handling of the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid injury situations. And it's probably a tone that Bill wouldn't have written with. He would have been gentler in some regards. But by the same token, the flip side of that was that he could find the drama and humanity in just about anything, any sports event, any storyline. He would find it, and I think that's informed me in terms of not how I write, but how I look for something to write about. Another hockey example: the Flyers played the Capitals last year in the first round of the playoffs, and they're down 3-0. Everybody knows they're going to lose the series. It's Game 4 of the series, so it's a game that even if they win, they're not going to win the series. And if they lose, you're going to just be you're going to be writing the season-ending column. Well, it turns out they won, and it turned out early in the game, one of their players lost an edge and crashed into the boards. And it looked very scary. It looked like he had suffered a serious injury. And so I ended up writing my column about that player in that moment, in part because, it was more interesting to me, and in part because the reason it was more interesting to me, I think, was because reading Bill let me see that moment was the column. Are the Flyers going to lose the series? Probably. Are the Capitals maybe going to go on and win the Stanley Cup? Yeah. But look at how freaking dangerous this sport is. This guy didn't do anything other than get checked near the net, and he almost got paralyzed. And he had to be taken to the hospital. And the whole building was silent for 5 minutes. And then we found out the guy was okay, and the Kings went on and played. The Flyers won, and it was kind of forgotten. But for those 5 moments, it was like, oh my God, this could have been something really, really serious. And it happens in hockey all the time.
Right.
And I feel like reading Bill allowed me to see that and see that that's what I ought to be writing about. Forget the Flyers' future, forget the future of the series. That's the human moment right here. This guy could have lost his career. He could have been seriously hurt. Write about that.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.